All right, so number 1. If you're watching this video, it's because you got number 1 wrong. Number 1 says, the author wrote this selection most likely to. When I think about what this question is asking, I'm thinking that it's asking me, why did the author write this? Why did the author write this text? And that's me paraphrasing the question in my own words. So, why did the author write this text? The question again was, the author wrote this selection most likely to. When they say selection, they're actually talking about the story or the text that you just read. So again, the text that we read was called Air Force One. They're asking you why the author wrote Air Force One. Now, I'm thinking if someone's asking me why the author wrote it, it's an author's purpose question. They want to know if the author is trying to persuade us, inform us, or entertain us. Okay? Now, when we were taking notes on our soapstone, we said that this was an informational text, that the author was simply trying to inform us. So, our answer choice should be something about informing us. A, it says recount the history of presidential transportation in the United States. B says describe Air Force One and its role in transporting U.S. presidents. C says compare various U.S. presidents' attitudes towards Air Force One. D, explain why frequent travel is required of U.S. presidents. Now, all of these recount, describe, compare, explain, all of these seem like informational. So then I have to go back now and then look at the actual text. Now, if I took my notes properly, then I would have looked at each titled and subtitled section and written notes about it. So, for example, flying presidents. In this section, it's explaining why presidents have to travel. It's also talking about historically, before there were airplanes or before air transportation was available to a lot of people, how presidents traveled. So, this part is talking about presidential traveling and why presidents have to travel. Then this part, revealing character. Now, I'm going to read over, if I haven't already read through it or didn't understand it the first time. I'm going to read over it again, but I've already read it, so if I'm summarizing this subtitled section, which is very similar to what you guys have been doing in your notebooks, I'm going to realize, okay, this section is talking about how you can tell a president's personality based on how they act on the Air Force One. All right, so how you can tell a president's personality based on how they act on the Air Force One. All right, so this is my main idea for the subtitle section, revealing character. And then for flying presidents, presidential traveling and why presidents have to travel. Now, I skipped over the first part, but this first part, Air Force One, this first introductory part, talks about, the main idea of this section is just informing the reader about the Air Force One. It's telling us the differences between Air Force One, I'm just going to put AFO, and regular planes. All right, so informing the reader about the Air Force One, and then the difference between Air Force One and regular planes. Okay, so now I'm looking again at my question. It says, the author wrote this selection most likely to. Again, why did the author write this text? Or what's the author's purpose? We said it's inform, but inform us about what? So, in the beginning of the text, they're informing the reader about the Air Force One. What is the Air Force One? All right, it's an airplane for presidents, and it's a special airplane. It's very different than other airplanes. Flying presidents. The reason why presidents travel and why they need to travel, and how the airplane helps them or supports them in this travel. Revealing character. The last part talks about how you can tell a president's personality based on how they act on the Air Force One. Okay, so again, we first learn about what the Air Force One is. We learn why the Air Force One is important in the history of traveling presidents. And then we talk about the personality of the president and learning about it by how they act on the airplane. So, when I'm looking at this question, the author wrote the selection most likely to A, recount the history of presidential transportation in the United States. All right, so yes, they do talk about the history of the presidential transportation. All right, they tell us about how presidents used to travel. But when they ask for selection, they're asking for the whole thing. And the whole thing doesn't just talk about the history of presidents traveling. Again, it talks about what the Air Force One is, the history of the presidents traveling and why they travel, and also the president's personality. The next one, describe Air Force One and its role in transporting U.S. presidents. Describe Air Force One. So the beginning is telling us what the Air Force One is. That is describing. And then its role in transporting U.S. presidents. Its role. So like how it's helped presidents travel. I'm thinking that, how they're traveling, so like how they act in the airplane is how they're traveling, and also the way in which they travel is how they're traveling. So I think I like this one so far. I'm going to cross out A because I don't think that's correct. C, compare various U.S. presidents' attitudes towards Air Force One. Again, that would be saying that the whole thing is talking about how each president has felt about the Air Force One, and the article doesn't talk about that. D, explain why frequent travel is required of U.S. presidents. It doesn't talk, the whole article doesn't talk, or the whole selection doesn't talk about why presidents need to travel all the time. Part of it does, but not the whole thing. All right, so I'm going to cross out D. B should have been our correct answer. All right, hopefully this is helping you, and good luck on your next question.